welcome back to another episode of Lids Podcast. We are here today. We are members of the nonprofit consulting team, and we had the opportunity to go to a few different conferences in the last month or so, and we learned a lot at these conferences, and so we kind of wanted to share some of our findings with you all. How does the provincial perspective on food insecurity and waste from the Feed Ontario conference differ from the national or even international conversations you've heard about? What about the differences between the US and Canada? I guess I can start on this because I went to the Feed Ontario and Food Banks Canada conference. From Feed Ontario, it was a lot of different food banks sharing their perspectives, at least on the sessions that I went to. And it was so nice because it was people just talking about their own experiences and giving people suggestions. So, some food banks were saying you should be on your local commerce board because a food bank at the end of the day is a business. So you should be on your commerce board. And, other people were writing this down. They were saying, you should be giving tours. You should always be inviting partners to tour your food bank so that they actually get to see, what happens with their donations. So I think it was the Feed Ontario conference was really how to empower the individual food banks and set them up for success. And I think, from my perspective at least, that slightly differed from the Food Banks Canada conference because the Food Banks Canada conference was really, looking forward to what's the plan across Canada for the next, 5 years. And yes, that definitely starts with the empowerment and the support of all these individual food banks across Canada. But it was also talking about, okay, how can we work together as a network on such a large scale, and support each other. And Feed Ontario, I guess, was also kind of similar, just within Ontario. So I guess that was something that differed. I guess Food Banks Canada conference, it was really looking big picture. What are some of the big steps that we can make to make an impact? Oh, and also some logistical things with sharing. If a food bank in Southern Ontario has a lot of donations and they're not going to be able to distribute them before the food goes bad, how do we make it that they can reach out to, food banks in Quebec or Saskatchewan or Northern Ontario? And how can we move that food as quickly as possible? Ultimately to avoid waste and to get people fed. So that was kind of the difference. I don't know if I answered that well, but did I?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's good.
And then national or even international?
Well, I feel like coming back to the balance between like positive things, which are the wins and achievements, versus like the bad side of it, I would say. I think a lot of this conference was about facing the fact that in terms of policy change, but also like budget cuts and a lot of things, like we're facing a lot of issues that are like limiting the amount of solutions and things we can do to reduce food loss and waste. But it was also a way to regroup everyone and to be like, okay, we know this is happening, but we need to act now, and like, what can we do about it? And how can we push for better things to happen in the future? Like, what are the next steps? This is what we did. This is what's happening. And what is the next step was kind of the key thing that I got.
Nice.
Yeah. They had at the ReFed conference, they had a session that was kind of spotlighting international partners.
It was a nice
partners, like international efforts on food loss and waste. And they had representatives from like Thailand and
it was Mexico. It was
was it Brazil?
Yeah, Brazil.
Yeah. England. England was represented. So that was cool. I think it was nice to have that reminder that it's like an international movement as well as a national movement.
Yeah, that's so true.
That some countries are way more advanced, or at the contrary, like they're very much at the beginning of understanding food loss and waste. So it's interesting to see like oh wow, we think that this is not even a solution because it's so basic, but then some people didn't even think of that, and now they're just starting to care about food loss and waste. So
I was going to say, like, I think food loss and waste is like such a multi-scalar issue, which is what makes it so, like, I guess on the one hand interesting and on the other hand complex, because it concerns like the individual, like what you have in your fridge and how you manage like your resources at home, and the you know, spinach that's going bad in your fridge and what you're going to do with that. You know, but then on the other hand, and like that's a daily decisions that you make. Whereas, and on the other hand, it concerns like the global climate, you know, and like countries legislating on how they're managing their organic waste. Also, you know, it's a huge role to play. So it's like, I don't know, it's such a multi-scalar issue. And I think that the ReFed conference did a really good job of bringing out those actions on different scales. Through the different sessions, through like spotlighting actors working at those different levels. And I guess emphasizing that it's all of those scales and pieces working together that's gonna like get things in the right direction.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like for food banks, you know, if we think all the food banks in Canada coming together and having these discussions and sharing their experiences can help, you know, inspire people and help people come up with new innovative solutions. You know, what would happen if it's on a global scale? You know, just having more people's experiences brought into it allows for so much more ideas to be brought forward and so many more solutions to be created, you know? And it's so different across different countries. And, you know, in Canada, it's so unique because we're a northern country, but also we still are able to, you know, grow a lot of food in some of the more southern regions. So I don't know, it could be cool to talk with like food banks in other northern countries. What are you guys doing?
And it's cool how, I think it's cool how like, I don't know, I think the food banks that at the Food Banks Canada conference, like on the one hand, they're very conscious that like solutions have to be very place-based and it depends very much on their context. Like they were very like conscious of that. And on the other hand, they were really keen to share their experiences and learnings and like where there were synergies between their experiences and like their operations and stuff to be able to learn from each other. Even in like we went to one about like how they market them, how food banks market themselves. And even if they're telling different stories, like there are still similarities in the way that they can efficiently market themselves. I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Well, no, it does. And that's, I think, a good reason also, or just a good point, that's also a good observation, you know, as to our team where we work with food loss and waste in the supply chain. For instance, you guys on ReFed. And then we also work with food banks who are literally like food banks in themselves are a solution to food loss and food waste, you know? And so I think just in general, like having those conversations at conferences is so, so important just for all the different players to like meet and interact, you know? Because maybe some people who were at the ReFed conference who, you know, is a business trying to reduce their food loss, maybe they've just never even considered talking to a food bank, figuring out who their local food bank is, who a local food rescue organization is, you know?
And just bring people around the table so that like we develop common language around things as well. And like I think otherwise like all these different actors can kind of exist in their own echo chambers or in their own like little circles in their own world. So I definitely agree with that.
About like the language, they were talking about how we need to switch the narrative of how you address food loss and waste, because a lot of them just hear food loss and waste and they just don't want to address it. But then once you make them understand that it is food that is still edible and can cannot be wasted and can go towards human food chain, like that's when they are interested in what you want to talk about. And okay, I didn't know that meant that. I thought it was just like,
yeah,
it has to
like
be
I thought it was this
critical.
negative thing when actually it can be
Make it
this
as a
super positive thing.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
why throw out something when that can be someone's meal for their
Exactly.
day, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a nice environment to like make those connections as well, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Conferences, like I had a great time. Like the food is really nice as well. Just like little cocktail events. Like it's just a really nice chance to chat to people. And like
Yeah.
you all have something in common because you're all working towards a similar
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah. And
People
learning.
are so open
Yeah.
to talk about.
It's so nice just hearing everyone's different experiences, their different backgrounds, how they came to this space, which is also another, like, such another reason why it's so important to have so many voices around the table, is because everyone comes from a different background. You know, we as Lid come from a supply chain background, which is a unique spot in this little world. But then, you know, it's so cool to hear about people who come from composting backgrounds, you know, because everyone can offer a different perspective.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, we met like a guy who was involved in vermicomposting.
Yeah.
Met like somebody who was like working for a school board.
We met someone who does food bank on wheels. Basically, if the food bank drives around. And then I shared this, that I met this man with someone who worked at a rural food bank. And she was like, oh my God, like that makes so much sense for rural food banks, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just so important to have conversations.
Yeah. And I think especially like, I don't know, especially since COVID, sometimes you forget just how important it is to get people in the same room.
So should we wrap it up with key takeaways?
What is one concrete idea or best practice you heard that you think Lid and our clients should be paying attention to?
Well, in the last session at Refed, they highlighted 3 takeaways, and it was like, time is now, there's a big role in policy, and collaboration is key. And I think the third one is super important and is like connected to Lid mostly. Because they were talking about how important it is to collaborate along the different nodes of the supply chain, and doing those like whole chain studies, for example, like we did for frozen potatoes or strawberries, like looking at one commodity across the whole supply chain and talking to the different stakeholders helps you really understand where the food waste is happening and what are the key hotspots and how to address this at different hotspots of the supply chain. So honestly, I think collaboration was a big theme at this conference, I would say.
In a nutshell, I think something else that was mentioned was that like policy is moving on this in this sector, and like it is building traction. And so I think eventually there are going to be regulations, like more and more regulations surrounding food loss and waste.
Yeah.
So the thing that was mentioned was like companies can get ahead of the curve now in establishing best practices and being part of that movement now while it's like voluntary.
Yeah.
And then eventually when it becomes a compulsory regulatory change, they'll be ahead of the curve and they'll be kind of trailblazers in that space. So I think that was something, that was a key takeaway that I had.
Yeah. I think a key takeaway, or at least something that I think is an idea that I'd like to leave with the viewers of our podcast, you know, whether it be food bankers, Lid clients, Lid employees, a best practice or an idea that I want to leave with people is kind of something that we've spoken of already a bit on here. And that's, you know, to educate yourself on, you know, if you are a food company, if you are a manufacturer, if you do work in processing, who are your local groups who can assist you on this venture in food loss? You know, who are your local food banks? Do you know who they are? Can you reach out to them? You know, I think it's just so important to be fostering these relationships. And I know it can be hard always on food banks, you know, to be trying to reach out to people. And you know, this is literally a free way for your food loss to not go to waste and to feed people who need that food. So I would encourage just taking a few minutes and just going on Google Maps and finding where your closest food bank is. If you are, someone working in the food sector and, you might be in a place where you have this loss that can be given away.
Yeah.
Do you know another best practice would be to reach out to us and talk to us?
Yeah, actually, well, yeah.
If you have project ideas that we love chatting about this stuff.
Yeah.
And
or if you're a food bank who is in a tough warehousing space, or if you're a food bank who has some space constraints, who's struggling in that sense, also reach out to us and we can help you figure out, what might work most efficiently for your space moving forward. And if you're looking to grow your space, if you do have a lot of donations and you think you can even increase those donations, we can help determine how the facility should best be laid out to support this.
And if you're a US-based food manufacturer or distributor, you should totally participate in our study on that we're doing with ReFed on food loss and waste in manufacturing and distribution in the United States. So contact us.
You should.
That is also a best practice that I would recommend.
And if you have any spinach going bad in your fridge, you can freeze it.
Thank you.